How would you operate today if you knew that things were going to expand over the next 3 to 5 years? What decisions would you make today if you knew that the world was going to get better? What decisions would you make today if you knew that there was going to be more opportunity a year from now than there is today, and way more opportunity 5 years from now than there is today? What would you do then? You can create an insane amount of wealth in 2 to 4 years. I don't care where you're starting. I don't care how broke you are. I don't care how many failures there are in your past. Within 2 to 4 years, you can create an immense amount of success. One of the benefits that I have as somebody who works with entrepreneurs is I get to see the full story. I get to see how this story plays out. I get to work with entrepreneurs who come into our community and barely have 2 nickels to rub together, or they don't even have their idea yet, and then they launch something and their mind goes, holy crap, I can take a sale. And if I can take 1 sale, I can take 100 sales. And if I can take 100 sales, then I can get to 100 sales a day, which, oh my goodness, is $1 million business. I have seen this happen hundreds of times. And as a result, I've learned not to count anybody out. I have seen truck drivers, accountants, failed entrepreneurs, teachers. I have seen all kinds of people that most people would say they don't have a chance. I've seen them win. So I have the benefit of seeing how this game plays out over a few years if someone follows the playbook. If someone follows the plan and they go all in and they work really hard for a year or 2 years, there's a really good chance that they're gonna have a 7-figure business. I've also seen the dark side of this game. This dark side is that most of us work from home behind computer screens, and we're carrying this massive load on our backs of what if this all falls apart? Am I gonna let my family down? Am I gonna let other people down? Am I even good enough to be able to do this? Who has my back? These are the dark thoughts of entrepreneurship that most people don't talk about. When I hosted our community here in Austin for an event called the Capitalism Conference, I wanted to open the event with a talk about expansion and collaboration, because as entrepreneurs, it's often tempting for us to feel like everything is about to crumble, like we're in this journey alone. Because as entrepreneurs, we have to go out on our own to create a new vision for our futures, for our families, for our finances, for our company. That can be a really lonely journey. But at the same time, we're the ones who are creating the expansion for everybody else. And when you know that and you realize that you're participating in the expansion of everything, you realize that it doesn't have to be a lonely journey. Just a heads up, if you are new here, I'm gonna be cutting in and out of this video, sharing some clips from a keynote that I gave at one of our recent events, and then I'll come back and give context and explanation for why I thought it was important to share with you.
How are we feeling? Good. Thank you all for being here. One of the beauties of being in the line of work that I'm in is I get to see how all this ends. There are people who come into the community who have 2 nickels to rub together and then go on to build $100 million businesses. There are people who come in and they have success in another industry and they're just looking for a place to serve. And they find that opportunity to serve by investing in or mentoring the next crop of success students. Entrepreneurship is this interesting dance of going out on your own while also needing to be in complete service to a community and to everyone around you. John Mackey coined this term of conscious capitalism. He spoke here on the stage when we first started doing this event back in 2016. He coined this term conscious capitalism. It was this idea that real capitalism needs to have all stakeholders in mind. Now, I appreciated the idea, but the term conscious capitalism never really sat well with me. Never sat well with me because, my opinion, all capitalism is conscious. You can be the most selfish, arrogant, self-serving person, but you don't succeed unless you create something that is better for someone else. So all capitalism is conscious. I instead prefer the term collaborative capitalism. The idea of when we come together to create something bigger than ourselves, everyone wins as a result. And yet most of us spend a decent amount of time alone in front of our laptops, in offices where no one else is there, and we wonder why we get discouraged. So I believe in this term of collaborative capitalism, especially in the context of what is or feels to be a more and more isolating world. Now, it's one thing to say, why is loneliness on the rise? Why is this considered an epidemic? Well, first of all, the obvious, why don't we take a 20-year experiment and take the most creative social people on the planet, put them in front of boxes with screens, beam negativity at them 24/7 and ask them to create big things. And then let's give them AirPods so that every time they're out in public, they can block out other people and nature and listen to a podcast of someone else talking about what they think is going to happen in the world. So there's that. But there is also this paradox of the fact that entrepreneurs by nature go out on their own to create new expansion. By the very nature of who we are and what we do, we decided to go it alone, to go do something different and hope for the best. Hope that it works out and carry the whole thing on our shoulders. And so entrepreneurs are 40% more likely to struggle with depression, anxiety, to commit suicide, to report feelings of extreme loneliness, to report having 3 or fewer friends. We're at risk of this. This is what we signed up for. Welcome to entrepreneurship. So something very magical happens when we put that down for a second and when we start to collaborate. Now, I want to invite just a thought to all of you. Now, to some of you, this will be self-evident. It's self-evident to me, but to most of the world, this is not self-evident. And it is the idea that we live in an ever-expanding universe. Things are always expanding.
When we feel alone as entrepreneurs, it's easy for us to forecast a future that is really scary. We forecast a future in which everything's going to crumble, we're going to lose everything, we're going to go bankrupt, we're going to be an embarrassment and a disappointment to all of our peers and our friends and our families, and that's a really scary thought. But if you know that the world's expanding, if you know that things are going to get better, if you know that you're going to get richer, if you believed that, then you would operate today with a lot more optimism. You would have an easier time ignoring the noise. You would have an easier time betting on the future if you knew that things were going to expand. It's kind of like if you knew a stock was going to go up, you wouldn't freak out about the times that it went down. You would just keep rolling as much as possible into that stock. Some people feel this way about Bitcoin. They put a ton of money into Bitcoin because they think that it's going to go way up over the long term. And so it doesn't matter when it dips, they just buy more. What if you had that conviction about the world? What if you had that conviction about your business? And in this clip from my talk at the Capitalism Conference, I make the case that things are not only going to go up, but they have gone up exponentially since we've been alive. And when you can see the trend of where this is going, you can operate with more optimism and confidence as you grow your business.
We live in an ever-expanding universe. This is self-evident to me, but this is not self-evident to everyone. I come from a religious background that said the world's got to degrade so that it can be redeemed. That most of the world, if they're watching the media, you are looking for the next disaster. It is right around the corner. This is how most of the world thinks. Most of the world believes not that we live in an expanding universe, but that the universe is getting more and more dangerous and that we are constantly under more and more threat. But it's kind of self-evident if we look at the evidence that we live in an expanding world, that by all objective measures, things are going up. This is a graph of the population going back for 10,000 BC. You see this little bump right here, right before the exponential curve? That's when free market capitalism came on the scene. As population expands, GDP expands. This is a graph that goes back to 1950. That's a 93,000x increase in gross domestic product, just from 1950. Just from 1950. Just from 1950. A 93x. Now you can say inflation, you can say we went off the gold standard, or you can say we've had an immense increase in productivity in that time frame because of markets, because of expanding opportunities, because of the expansion of freedom. Wealth expands. This is just the S&P 500. That top of the financial bubble right here, if you had put all your money into the top of the market in 2007, right before the collapse, right, all your money right before the collapse, you'd be up about 4x right now. Because over time, things expand. Now, this wasn't told to me at the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. I didn't believe this, I didn't know this at the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. But if I had known that over time things expand, I would have been a little bit more aggressive. I would have been a little bit more optimistic. I would have taken myself a little bit less out of the equation and I want to bet on creating something knowing that regardless of what I do, the world is going to expand. I just have the option to participate in it or not. When I first rebranded our company to Capitalism.com, I did it because I thought capitalism needed saving. I saw my generation talking about capitalism differently than previous generations had talked about it, and I thought we needed to rebrand this as something that was the most powerful force for good ever in existence. But what I soon found was that capitalism didn't need saving. Capitalism was gonna win. Capitalism is winning. Freedom always wins. You can hold it back temporarily, but all that does is increase the demand for more freedom and more expansion and more productivity. So capitalism is gonna win. But the mindset of entrepreneurs and the mindset of capitalists needed adjusted. Because if we live in an expanding world, if things are going to go up with or without us, then we are simply willing participants or not. And if we are willing participants, we get to enjoy the fruits of all of that creativity. But if we remove ourselves from all of that expansion, that's when we start to feel really crappy. It's when we start to feel really isolated. It's when we start to feel like everything is passing us. Opportunity expands. This is a graph of extreme poverty just from 1820. What happened around 1820? The idea of free market capitalism started to come on the scene. And we've eradicated more than 90% of extreme poverty in 150 years. We had tens of thousands of years of oppression and extreme poverty, and free markets come on the scene and we eradicate 90% of extreme poverty in a few generations. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that different from what we hear beamed at us through our screens 24 hours a day? But this is the trend because over time things expand. I like this graph a little bit better because it shows the numbers. This is just from 1990. In 1990, over 30% of the world was living in some form of poverty. The population has gone up since then, but the number of people in poverty has gone down. The population has gone up, but the number of people in poverty has gone down to well under 1 billion people. That is because we live in an ever-expanding universe. Now we can take it to our industry as well. E-commerce expands. This middle, like right in the middle, the middle blue bar in 2014, that was when everybody told me that e-commerce was now saturated, the good times were over, that's when it wasn't a good time to start a business. All the people who got in, they got the spoils. Well, we've gone up and we continue to go up. Or for those of you who sell on Amazon, this is the curve since 2000 of what Amazon's revenues have been just from shopping on the platform. And once again, that little graph right there in 2014 is when everybody said there's all the getting has been gotten. There's going to be no more growth. That is the mindset that things are not expanding, that things won't expand. But if you know that the universe is expanding, that markets are expanding, that opportunities are expanding, then you can always bet on a bigger and a brighter future. Valuations also expand. Now, sometimes this feels overwhelming when we are basing our projections on the past of how things used to be. When we think about my reference point for a meaningful exit or a meaningful valuation is X, based on the past, we tend to look at the world and say, wow, things are moving a lot faster than me. I don't know that I can keep up. But when we look at the fact that it's always going to expand, things are always going to get bigger, there's always going to be new opportunity, then we look at something like this. It's canned water. This company's a few years old, and they're valued at $1.4 billion. This is a headline from last month. So valuations expand. The amount of capital in the markets expand. The number of opportunities expand. And when you know this, when you're aware of this, it makes it just obvious that we can bet on a bigger and brighter future.
I hope that you can see from what I just shared on stage that the world is becoming more abundant, or at least that the world's expanding, that GDP is going up, that population is going up, that opportunity is going up. And as a result of that, we can make a pretty sure bet that that's going to continue in the future. Yes, there will be recessions. Yes, there will be downturns, but in the long term, things tend to go up. I wish I had known this at the beginning of my career. Just to get personal with you for a second, I grew up in kind of a cultish wing of a very conservative religion that believed that at any point there was going to be a massive upheaval, that the world was basically going to go down the toilet. And as a result, I kind of have baked into my system some fear about that happening. And I think that that fear held me back from betting on the future, from betting on optimism. That's why I'm so loud about this idea, because I realize that that was wrong. I realize that the world does go through really hard times, but that over time, things expand. If I knew how much things were going to expand in my lifetime, I would have been much more aggressive and optimistic about the future of my company, the future of my investments, the future of my skill set, the future of the relationships that I would make. I would see a better future than the one that I have today. And when we see a better future than the one we have today, we tend to operate with more conviction and confidence, and we get to create the things that we want to create rather than trying to be defensive of what exists now. So why do so many of us still feel alone and isolated and fearful about our futures if the world is expanding? And this comes down to the question of, do you see yourself as part of the expansion, or do you see yourself as separate from it all? Do you see yourself as isolated from the context of the world, or do you see yourself as part of the expansion? And the difference there is, do you see yourself as part of the abundance that is naturally unfolding with or without you, or do you see yourself as one of the pieces that could die while everything else is expanding? And the way that you see that difference determines everything about how you see the world and how you operate your business within the context of that world. As simple and pragmatic as this is, this impacts what you do on a day-to-day basis. Because if you knew that this business was going to work out, you'd start the business. If you knew that that investment was going to do well, you'd make the investment. And of course, there's a healthy amount of skepticism and market research that goes into making decisions, but how often do we want to do something and we don't, simply because we're fearful of what will happen to us personally if it doesn't work out? That's why I think it's so important for us to look at the context and see there's gonna be more opportunities. You haven't missed the boat, because there's gonna be another boat and another boat and another boat and another one and another opportunity. And as the world continues to expand, there's going to be an infinite number of opportunities. And one of them is probably gonna work out great. And if you know that one of those opportunities are gonna win, and you know that that is also going to expand and create more expansion for other people, then you don't worry about the temporary setbacks, or that this week was a bad sales week, or that we got a negative review, or that someone said something bad about us. That doesn't matter in the long-term expansion of the trend of where everything is going. And that long-term view changes everything about how you show up as an entrepreneur on a day-to-day basis. So in this next part of the talk, I want to give you some examples. And these examples are people from our community who come from humble backgrounds. Some of them were starting over from nothing. And over the course of a couple of years, they created new expansion for themselves, for their families, for their futures. And they started exactly where most of you are who are watching this video or listening to this podcast. And I hope you can see these examples as inspiration of what is possible for you if you bet on expansion over the next 2 to 4 years. Most of you know me for this work, for this model that I swore I would never ever say ever again, which is 4 products times 25 sales a day at $30 is $1 million business. This is how many of you, if not most of you, found my work. And the plan was very obvious. If you build a small audience and you give products to them that they want, and you give them 25 sales a day and repeat that, you'll have $1 million business. And after 2 to 4 years of hard work, you can sell your business for a whack ton of money. I basically started teaching this because I felt really alone in my journey. Because for years I felt isolated and cut off from the whole. And because I was building a business by myself with my partner, worried about making rent, worried about it all going away, worried about what would happen if I made a mistake. And so I started teaching this so that other people would feel a little bit more plugged into the journey. And as a result,
We've had hundreds of success stories of people building million-dollar businesses. In fact, let's look at them from the last year. Where's Alina? Alina, Rookie of the Year right here. Alina did not have a business a year ago. Had not taken a sale a year ago, correct? Had not taken a sale, did not have a product, had not launched. Launched what, 4 months ago? December. Launched in December, so 4 months ago, now pacing 50 sales a day or more. Give it up for Alina, Rookie of the Year. There's Brad and Chelsea Halbert, who a year ago were thinking about packing it in, thinking about giving up, thinking about saying, I just don't know that we're cut out for this. Came back to basics, started following the plan again, had their first $1 million year in 2023. They had a $200,000 launch in January. They've now had 3 separate $100,000 days just by building small audiences and launching products to them, products that weren't even ready to be fulfilled yet. There's Miguel right here. This guy, one of the more recent launches, didn't have a product, what? Today? Still don't have a product? Doesn't even have inventory yet. Yet last month, spends 45 days building an audience, does a launch over 30 days, does $100,000 in pre-orders for a product that doesn't even exist yet, and is now en route to $1 million business. Congratulations, Miguel. Where's Ben? Where's Ben? Ben may be on a flight from Italy right now if he's not in the room. He's coming at lunch. So Ben, a year ago at the conference, here at the conference, did not have a product, did not have an audience, did not have a business, didn't know what he wanted to do. Couple months in, gets to about $1,000 a day in sales. Today has a $1 million business. Now is turning around and teaching other people the things that he unlocked along the way. And again, a year ago, nothing. Today has a $1 million business, has a 7-figure business. One of my favorite stories is Ryan and Tristina, because 2 years ago, once again, they had been beating their head against the wall for years, trying to make something happen. And then in November of 2022, built a very small audience, launched a new product, 6 weeks did $100,000 in sales. They did $2 million in 2023. And at the end of the year, said, Ryan, how you feeling? He's like, a little bummed we didn't go to 3. And I was like, is that not the reflection of the entrepreneur? Spent 7 years trying to get to $1 million, finally got to 2, but it could have been 3. It could have been more. And I'm super proud of them and all the progress that they have made.
The examples that you just saw were entrepreneurs who were not even in the game 2 years ago. They were not running the businesses that they have today 12, 18, 24 months ago. They just got started. They are just at the beginning of their journey. And I just want you to think, if that can happen in a year or to 18 months, what can happen in 5 years? What can happen in 10 years? And so often as entrepreneurs, we don't get started because we're afraid of what could happen in the short term. And so we never get off the ground to do the hard work that is required for 6 to 12 months so that we're like some of those examples. What you just saw were examples of entrepreneurs who bet on expansion for a year, some of them less than a year, and they started to hit pay dirt. On the small end, one of those examples is doing about $500,000 a year. On the top end, one of those entrepreneurs is doing about $3 million a year. And those entrepreneurs were not in the game 2 years ago. That's what can happen in a short period of time if you know that things are gonna expand. But it's so easy to justify doing nothing in our heads because we see the short-term fears that are potential threats. What if instead of calculating the short-term threats, you calculated the long-term expansion, the long-term opportunity, the long-term possibility? How would you operate today if you knew that things were going to expand over the next 3 to 5 years? What decisions would you make today if you knew that the world was going to get better? What decisions would you make today if you knew that there was going to be more opportunity a year from now than there is today, and way more opportunity 5 years from now than there is today? What would you do then? When you can operate from that place, you're ready. Because then you won't get discouraged when 1 week is a minor setback in the context of a journey to 7 figures or 8 figures. And that's where we help entrepreneurs who are betting on that future, because guess what? The plan works. The system works. And it's a really good time right now to start that entrepreneurial journey to 7 figures. I want to share one more thing with you, and it's the vision that I'm bringing to life because I'm betting on expansion. But before we go there, I want to talk to all of you who are feeling convicted and saying, all right, I got to get off the sidelines and start. One thing that you can do today to start your journey is to download our free resources and our playbook to 7 figures, which is free for you at capitalism.com/playbook. If you go over there and you enter your email address, I will send you my playbook to building a business to 7 figures in 6 to 12 months, as well as a bunch of case studies, examples, and trainings that will give you ideas, launch plans, and the confidence to launch this business. Go over there to capitalism.com/playbook and let's get you off the sidelines and into the game. You'll be amazed at what can happen over the next 6 to 12 months. Now I want to share with you a part of my vision that I'm betting on because I believe we're going to have more opportunity over the next couple of years than has ever existed in the past. I might be one of the lone voices in our community that has been saying that for the last 18 months, that there's going to be more opportunity in the future than there is today. Most people would say the boat has left the station. All the good times were behind us. I am here to tell you that the best opportunities are still coming. So let me share with you part of my vision for where I want to take this community moving forward. And I shared it for the first time at the Capitalism Conference. When you're in a place in which you feel as though people genuinely have your well-being in mind, our natural reaction is to create and to serve. It is how we are naturally wired. We don't think about what we can get out of it. We naturally get things out of it by nature of being in service in a creative mode. Have you experienced something like that before? But when you are alone in front of a computer, when you are cut off from the whole, when you are worried about no one having your back or what will happen if everything crumbles, then the natural reaction is to try to extract in order to protect, in order to safeguard, in order to create even more isolation, because if I have a pile of money, I won't need to rely on these fuckers who don't have my back. But when you feel naturally plugged into it, when you feel like you are part of it all, the natural tendency is simply to create. It is simply to serve. And the weird thing about that is as soon as you're in that mode, you get everything you ever wanted because you're not attached to it anymore, because you don't have to hold on to it anymore. There's less effort involved in it. There's more energy, there's more juice to the squeeze because it feels fulfilling all of a sudden. So I think about this idea of once you have built the plan, once you are at 7 figures, it is not as though the isolation and the loneliness goes away. There's just a different level of people that you need. You need support because once you're at 7 figures, you can no longer do everything yourself. In fact, one of the plateaus that I didn't expect when I started mentoring people was that there would be a natural plateau at about 1 to 2 million because all of a sudden there was a switch from I'm going to create, I'm going to serve to now I need to defend. I have now reached my limit of my capacity. I have reached my limit of how much time that I can give to something. I am stretched in a bunch of different directions. And now I've reached a natural plateau of $1 to $2 million, which is where a lot of entrepreneurs stay and get stuck because they move from the expansion mindset into more of an isolated mindset. And then they get on the hamster wheel to go even faster and they learn more things that allow them to run faster and they try to make things move faster and it just doesn't happen because they're at full capacity. You also need things like capital. In order to build a vision, you at least have to scale inventory orders. At the very least, you have to be able to do that. And you need dry powder for growth, whether that comes from savings or it comes from somebody else's bank account. You need other people in order to cross through that plateau. And you need a vision that is bigger than what you've created, which is really hard to do when you feel isolated, alone, and scared. If you've ever sat down to work on my vision while you feel like crap, all of a sudden the vision that you are casting is just about how much money you can extract from the economy rather than what you actually want to create through you. But when you feel plugged in, when you feel like people have your back, when you feel like you're creating something that is beyond more than just you, all of a sudden the vision just pours out of you and the pieces are there because other people are desperate to want to plug into a vision that is bigger than themselves.
And so the most profitable thing that we can do, the most fulfilling thing that we can do is stay in that zone. And so this is a quick preview of something that we're building this year, which is called the Capitalism Marketplace. If you want to see the MVP of it, you can go to capitalism.com/marketplace. Don't put your credit card in, it won't go anywhere. This is an MVP. We are developing the technology to create more collaboration among the brands and the participants of this community. And what this allows us to do is take the brands that are operating from that place of vision, the brands that, and the entrepreneurs who are creating more value for the world, the brands who are serving a group of people and creating more than they are trying to take. We can actually bring all of the resources together to support that entrepreneur and to support that brand. We have the tech set up now to where an investor can come in, put $1,000 on a credit card, and on the next page, they see their shares. So just like an e-commerce checkout, they can come in, they can invest in a company, and then they see a dashboard of their portfolio. They see where they're incentivized, they see the company updates, they see where the brand needs help. The entrepreneur is able to communicate with everyone who has an incentive. We can actually align the incentives behind every participant in the community. Both brand owner, investor, influencer, advisor, they can all be on the same page with one goal, and it is to support the brand that is creating expansion. What does this do? What this allows us to do is fulfill all of the things that allow an entrepreneur to operate from a place of creative vision and expansion. Yes, we can raise capital. That is cool. We can create partnerships with both the brand owners and with investors, but we can do it in a way that's crowdsourced, because raising capital kind of sucks. Like, putting together, like, you have to, first of all, put together a deck and act like you're excited about it when half the time you just feel isolated and alone. And you have to cast this vision when you're in this place of doubt and you're worried that everything's about to crumble, but you're casting a vision for the future, which means that I gotta be really good at selling this thing. I gotta be really convicted about this and convince somebody else to please, oh please give me your money. And then you book 10 meetings, hoping that one of them shows up with a check. And then if they do invest for the next 3 years, psychologically you have this burden of, I hope I do that person well. And as a result, a lot of entrepreneurs crumble after they get the thing that they think they needed, which is capital, because now they're in defense mode because they're afraid to lose what they got. They're afraid to lose what somebody else gave them. But if we can crowdsource it, meaning that the risk is not on one investor writing a $100,000 check, it's on it's on 100 investors writing $1,000 checks and now participating in the growth of that business, all of a sudden we've been able to crowdsource that capital. One of the reasons why we want to do that is the way that we have it legally structured, we can have up to 200 investors per deal, which simply means that we actually don't want big checks. We want investors who are just participating on a small way with the incentive of everybody else to win, because if a brand goes to launch a new product and they have a built-in list of 200 people who are incentivized to buy it, create testimonial videos, write reviews, all of a sudden we can really seed the foundation of a launch and a product and give them the runway to be able to create not just the products that they think are going to work in the marketplace, but the products that actually create a difference for the customers that they're trying to serve. So we can flip the whole energetic shift of it. We can actually flip it so that the entrepreneur is in a place where they're only thinking about vision. They're only thinking about collaboration. They're only thinking about what they can create that is bigger than what has existed, because they have proper support with people who have incentives for that person to succeed. And in doing so, we can also create built-in advisors and influencers and reviewers, because we have people who have an incentive for this brand to win, and so they're willing to open up their Rolodex to serve someone else. You have a list of people who are financially incentivized for this brand to win, not only for the financials of it, but because it's actually fun and fulfilling to do. It feels really good when you're in a place that you can provide value for somebody else and you happen to get something out of it in the aggregate. That feels really good. That feels like collaboration to me.
I get really excited about the idea of collaborative capitalism. That means when people who are success-minded start to work together, we can create more abundance when we don't feel so alone and when we pool resources and we pool knowledge. And the best way that I know how to do that is to leverage the community of entrepreneurs who have already built seven-figure businesses and give them the opportunity to create partnerships on a platform that we're calling the Capitalism.com marketplace. We're working on it right now. I'm nervous to share it with you because it's so early. We just have a basic MVP up. But me sharing it with you, as uncomfortable as it makes me feel, because I've never done something like this before, I hope that it can show you that I'm betting on the expansion, that I'm betting on creating something different in our community. And I hope that you decide to be part of it. Whether that is you are starting a business and you need the resources and the support to be able to launch this thing, or if you've got a successful business and you need advisors and capital and the systems to be able to grow, or you're an investor looking for cool opportunities to invest in the next crop of entrepreneurs that are coming from this community, this is a way for all of us to participate together. And we don't have a business model for it yet. We don't have a way to monetize it yet, but it's what I want to do. It's the opportunity I want to create. It's the opportunity that is my part of the expansion over the next couple of years. So stay tuned for more on the opportunities that will be coming from the Capitalism.com marketplace. And in the meantime, if you're just getting started, please go get the free resources over at capitalism.com/playbook. It's the best place for you to start on day one and get things moving so that one day we're talking about investing in your company, we're talking about featuring you on the podcast or raising capital for you on the marketplace, or at least making introductions for you to the people who can support you on your journey. I'm Ryan Daniel Moran with Capitalism.com. And I believe in collaborative capitalism. Hey, if you found value in this video, let me know what you thought of it in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. See ya.